Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. I'm back with the contest crew: Bill, W9KKN, Dan, N6MJ, Randy, K5ZD, and the man of the hour, Chris, KL9A. We're just days after the CQ WPX CW contest, and I've got to say, I was glued to the contest online scoreboard all weekend long, watching Chris and Bracco and a few others. It was a lot of fun watching it, a lot of close races. So I'll start with you, Chris. Tell us about CQ9A.
Well, it was kind of a last minute decision, with maybe 2 months of preparation. And the station's amazing on the north side of Madeira, and huge antennas and a top of a mountain, and everything works. Everything was beautiful. It was a great experience. First time for me in Zone 33, so I didn't really know what to expect, but it worked out okay.
So to me, the thing that was amazing was you were doing 2BSIQ, obviously, and with serial numbers. So how much harder does that make it?
Well, it's not easier, that's for sure. I practiced for a couple of months, and that made a big difference. The biggest thing about this contest is it's activity limited, so it's not like I had raging pileups and both years. Certainly, there was times where I did, but it wasn't the intensity of CQ Worldwide. But the challenge of copying the numbers correctly made it really interesting to stay motivated, because mults are just kind of, as you said before, they just kind of show up. Not that there's not a strategy to that, but the serial numbers kept it interesting, and the challenge of working guys that made your rhythm off made it really fun, because 2BSIQ requires, by definition, synchronization. And when someone says anything extra, if they said R or TU or your call or anything, the whole thing falls apart. And out of 6,000 cues, like 5,900 of those QSOs fell apart. So at first I was really frustrated, and if anybody's operated with me, they know I yell at the radio. Valery actually said he learned 17 new English swear words watching me operate. So that was a bonus. I was happy to help out that. But instead of getting mad, I realized that was a challenge, was keeping the synchronization going and how to do that. And then it became really fun. But it took probably 2 hours for me to figure that out.
Well, I've noticed when I do log checking, 2BSIQ guys tend to pay a little bit of a price in getting the numbers right. Just hard to do. And even those of us who are operating much more pedestrian rates, it was with the QSB and everything else. And the fact that a lot of people can't really send numbers perfectly. Even I asked for a lot of repeats, and even then I still wasn't always 100% sure I had it right.
Yeah, and you ask for repeat, you get 4 different numbers back, and you got to guess, and you ask again, and then one of those kind of matches, so you go with that. That's all too common. Yeah.
What was your thinking on low bands versus high bands with the double points on 40 and 80?
So my strategy was operate. I'm giving away secrets here, I guess. Maybe I'll give some disinformation here. So the strategy was operate the entire time with darkness, which was about 20 hours of darkness over the 2 days. So that was confirmed operating time. And then if the bands were open to the States and Europe at the same time, I would focus on the high bands when they're both open, not just Europe or not just the States. And that worked out pretty well. The problem with the low bands, even from CT3, was you run out of guys to work. So it was kind of a trade-off between, running 40 and 80 versus 40 and 20. 80 was really good. There's just not a zillion guys on there in WPX. But I thought 300 Qs on 80 was about right. 40 dried up pretty quick too, from what I expected. But even half the rate, it's twice the point, so it was the same as a big hour on 20. But 15 and 20 were open the whole contest, the whole time. The JAs were quite loud on 15 at times, which was nice. They were in on 20 most of the time, but they weren't loud. And when you have a JA pileup that's S1, it just kills your second radio, because you just cannot work the guys. But I made 170 of each, I think, on 20 and 15, so that was cool. But the strategy was, kind of play it by ear. I took 3 4-hour breaks roughly versus 2 bigger ones. I don't like to take super long breaks. So it worked out.
What did you find on 10 meters? Much at all?
So 10 was really good to Europe, and UA9 and just crazy good. And I worked 69 stations in the US on 10 only. It just was not really there. I don't know. Um, Guys would call in from W1 and they'd be loud, and then I'd work four guys that I could barely hear. So it was spotty to the States, but Europe was super good. But again, if it wasn't open to States and Europe, I probably didn't go there. So in this contest, I don't need mults per band. So 15 and 20 were usually better than 15 and 10.
Yeah, I saw in the comments after the contest, a lot of people were complaining about, oh, 10 wasn't any good, or 10 was not as good as we expected, or whatever. But it is WPX CW. 10 is always bad because it's summertime, and if sporadic E doesn't happen, then nothing happens. And there's always a good sporadic E in Europe, it seems like, on WPX CW weekend. That probably helped a little bit with, and plus you were north-south into those guys.
I have almost tripled my pre-contest goals on 10. I just didn't expect it to be that good. And it was open. I had a third radio with an SDR to monitor it. It was open. I mean, from sunrise well past sunset. It just wasn't worth the band even to be on.
It was all about the volume, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was looking at the scoreboard, and I noticed that Bracco spent a lot of time on 10 meters, and like way more than you did.
Yeah.
I think it cost him a little bit.
I don't know. D4, he said in his write-up he's 2,000 kilometers further south from Europe, and that's true. It's like 1850, but we'll round up to 2,000. I would have been on 10 meters a lot more if I was him, because he's not going to get 40 and 80 as well, so he's got to make up the QSO volume on the high bands. And his 10 meter number was double mine, and that checks out. The nice thing about CT3 was 20 was really good. The absorption didn't hit me into Europe. It was only one hop, so I had, I don't know, 1,900 Qs on 20 or something, and I think he had quite a few less, and that sounds about right.
So how did you get hooked up for this guest stopping opportunity?
Well, just like meeting in the hallways of Dayton, we met in the beer line in WRTC in Italy last year. And it was just one of those things like, hey, I know you, and you have no idea who I am, but I'm Chris. And if you ever want someone to operate, let me know. It'd be fun. And we just kind of left it at that. And then, I don't know, several months after that, Valery invited me for some multi-ops, couldn't make it work. And then 2 months ago, he said, hey, if you want to come for single op, station's available. I was like, whoa, let me think about that for a second.
Tell me more.
And we already had this trip to Dayton planned and to Miami with our wives. And I asked my wife, what do you think about me going to Medeira for a contest instead of going home with you and taking my longer trip? And her first question was, well, is it just a contest or are you doing something else? I said, no, just a contest. Not doing anything fun. It won't be anything cool, nothing extra. She said, okay, nothing extra. Yeah, that's totally fine. So that's how that happens.
So you were trying to keep your operation somewhat under wraps until it seems like the last week, or once you were there, you were posting on Facebook a lot. What was the thinking on that?
I don't know, man. The biggest thing was I was so busy with work and everything. I honestly had too many things going at once to really give a full-on trash talking experience that would be worthy. But I didn't want to jinx anything because I'd never been to the station before. I've never done anything over there before. What if I missed my flight in Madrid? That could always happen. I'd get there right before the contest started. There's nothing wrong with a little psychological warfare before a contest either. So.
So, Chris, you had said before we got started that you were watching the contest online scoreboard. Was that motivational to you? Did it cause you to do anything different?
Yeah, it did, and I hate to admit that because I think it hurt my score. The scoreboard's motivational when you're in first place. If you're not in first place, it can be demoralizing, and I hate that. So we had it up on a TV monitor behind on the back wall, so I could watch it the whole time, and it changed my strategy in the fact that I didn't search and pounce for mults more than I probably should have. I did have a little bit of a run on 40 where I worked a bunch of mults real quick before I took an off time. But I knew that I was ahead on mults by a lot, so I got a little bit lazy and complacent, and I hate that. So that won't happen again. Um, so that's pretty much the only thing that changed it. But when you see the gap get narrower versus widening, you're like, oh man, I got to push harder. This is terrible. I can't get closer. So every hour that I was up a little more was motivating. But I probably wouldn't watch. I will not watch the scoreboard doing a serious single op in CQ Worldwide from DX. Like I never have. I just don't think that's something that's good for me.
Well, just for the sake of the audience, you ended with an unofficial 6,089 QSOs and 1,360 prefixes. Bracco was right there at 1,345 prefixes and 5,720 QSOs. And I think anybody who was watching this, the last hours, he kept inching closer and closer.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Do you think was that a function of things being activity limited? Do you think you just wanted guys to work first?
Yeah, we had different off time strategies, and Bracco actually messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm on an off time. What's your off time?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got another 40 minutes left or whatever," and that's no big deal. But we're activity limited for sure. That was definitely the case the whole second day. That's why I take mostly off time the second day, because the first day is always better. Now the conditions the second day were noticeably better, even in CT3. And guys said, "Oh, the conditions aren't great." Like, man, if I had good conditions, I can't imagine what it would have been like, because it sounded pretty dang good to me. But a guy that operates from Montana, of course, it's going to sound pretty good.
It feels like we kind of jumped over half the story, in that WPX CW following 1 week after Dayton is kind of a tough calendar double, because I know I was certainly lacking some energy and motivation that when I came back to K3LR for the contest after having just moved and then done 4 days of Dayton and then driven home and driven back again. But for Chris, you mentioned having a lot of things going on. You did a fantastic presentation at the contest dinner at Dayton on Saturday evening, one that was really impactful and very heartfelt, and just touched on a lot of things that I think all of us feel but don't always able to put a voice to it. And I think there's a video on YouTube of it, so maybe Kevin can put that in the notes somewhere. But it's worth people watching if they just want to understand kind of what's going on behind what appears to be all this craziness. Chris did a good job of capturing the people side of things. So kudos for you for that. And then to go on vacation and then to go do a contest the next week. And that's like the triple.
I was telling Dan, we went to Miami after Dayton to relax, and it took me, Bill laughs, I didn't really relax until the second day in Miami, because I had worked like a month straight, and then Dayton was stressful because I had all these things to do. It's just so overwhelming. And I finally relaxed in Miami, and then I flew to Medeira the next day. But whatever.
Randy, to your point, Chris has approved a short narrative that kind of captures a lot of the key points from the speech, and I'm going to be sending that out via Substack with a link to that, the video of the speech. So I'll release that the same day that this video gets released. So if anybody would like to see that, just look for me on Substack, and there'll be that write-up and the link to the speech from Dayton.
I think everybody who's been at the highest levels of contesting can relate to some of the stories Chris had, and that in the end it all comes back to your spouse and your family and their willingness to put up with this. And even asking your wife, "Oh, can I go to Medeira for the contest at the end of the vacation?" I can imagine exactly how that conversation went and what was involved, because I probably had the same conversation more than once in my household as well. And also just the getting acquainted with, none of us had normal first dates or dating relationships. My wife kept asking me to go out, and I kept going, well, I can't do it, because she kept asking me on weekends, and there was always a contest going on. So we all have the nerdy part of our history, but it was just great, because without that spousal support, letting you build a station and travel and spend the time. One of the things I told my wife one time was, well, it's only 6 weekends a year.
Right.
I have never been allowed to. I've never been allowed to forget that statement because it's not the 6 weekends. Yes, it may be 6 major weekends a year, but what she finally realized was no. It's the 2 weeks getting ready for the contest. It's the week after it's over to recover and blah. Blah. So it's way more than just 6 weekends.
Yeah, I mean, you not only have to practice CW and all of that, but you need to practice selling this to your spouse. Like, days before a contest, I'm just practicing. How is this conversation going to go?
Right.
I think that's the amazing thing. It's not selling. They're kind of resigned to it. It was part of the package when you walked down the aisle. Was you were getting this person who liked to spend 48 hours staring at a radio, and they you've either lasted or you haven't by now.
So Randy, tell us about K3LR.
So we did a multi-multi. We were trying to break the U.S. record, to have some of the same kind of success we had on phone. Unfortunately for us, KC1XX was also multi-multi, and they had a really outstanding all-star crew. So we just couldn't keep up on 80 and a little bit on 15 and 20. So they ended up beating us by a little bit. But it was so frustrating because KC1XX, Matt, doesn't believe in putting his score on the scoreboard. I'm pretty sure he watches, so he's a taker, not a giver. But, we were... so it was frustrating not to know how the competition was doing other than just what kind of numbers they were sending, that type of thing. But we had as always, a first-class operation, good crew. We worked everything that we could, but we definitely noticed the conditions were up and down at times, including a total blackout on 20 for a while on Sunday, and we just ran out of people to talk to. It started to feel like sweepstakes. I'm sitting on 20. I put the CQ on repeat because it wasn't worth hitting F1 over and over and over again.
I think it's notable that the difference between KC1XX and LR QSOs, it was only 260 QSOs more and only 20 prefixes more. So really tight.
Yeah, but you really have to look at QSO points in this contest because the double points on 80 meters, we just couldn't make up the 600 miles of distance on 80. I'm not making an excuse. This is what it is. We were certainly there. We were trying. Just couldn't work everybody.
Randy, did you have a sense, even though they weren't on the contest online scoreboard, did you have a sense that they were ahead of you?
Yeah, we did.
All right, then.
That's all he's saying. Any other questions?
It's like his camera just went blank.
That's awesome.
Well, it didn't make it any more fun because we knew we were behind, and actually for a long period of time we were catching up, but on Sunday afternoon they just walked away from us, and it's hard to tell why. I have this eerie feeling that I'm getting foreshadowing of what it's going to be like to be a single up from W8.
And Dan and Bill, did you set this one out?
Yep. I did watch Chris the entire time though.
And Dan, you also sat it out?
I mostly sat it out. I was actually trying to go to K3LR myself. I also knew that we had the trip to Miami planned because I went with Chris, and I got approval from my wife, so she said yes, I can go to K3LR. But I started looking at my PTO at work, and I've been taking lots of PTO this year, which is great. But I didn't have enough to make that trip actually work. So in the end, I had to turn down the K3LR invite, which kind of sucked because that would have been a lot of fun to operate with Randy and the group out there going against KC1XX. But I operated from here at the house. I mean, 500 or 600 Qs, just having a little bit of fun. I did not have a rare prefix or anything, just used a good old N6MJ. Wasn't super rare or anything, but it was fun to get on, work some of the boys, worked Chris on a few bands. And then even my brother, KK6BB, operated from here at the house. He was here over the weekend, and he worked about 25 guys. And it was kind of funny because he used to be a really good operator when he was young, but he hasn't operated a whole lot lately. And he sat down to work a few guys in the contest, And about half an hour later, he comes into the other room that we're all sitting in. He's like drenched in sweat. We're like, "What happened?" He's like, "Oh man, I was like super nervous calling these guys. Like his shirt was like soaked through." That was the highlight for me.
Poor guy.
I was on 20 with Mark KD4D, and we agreed before the contest that the correct amount of aggression on the in-band station was if you both feel like you want to kill the other guy but you don't, that's where you want to be. And I'd say we pretty well achieved that, because there were numerous times where we were yelling at each other because you'd go 5 minutes with no QSO, and then for some reason somebody would answer CQ at the same time you're calling a guy on the in-band station, and so we both wipe each other out. And then you're asking for repeats, and then you both send it over again. So it's just part of the challenge. But in multi these days, that's how you have to do it. You have to vacuum up everything. If it shows up as a spot, you got to be there. And what impressed me about LR, this is the first time I've done 20. It's got to be the loudest station on 20 meters in the world, because I never felt so loud. And where you notice it is in the different times where the band's not really open to Europe very much, and there's these weak guys that get spotted, and you call them and they come right back to you. And it's like, wow, I can barely hear you, and you came right back to me like I'm in your next door. So that was pretty fun to be at a place that's that that stout, and with a call sign that everybody gets. There were very few times where people didn't get the call, and that's worth a lot too.
So I don't want to leave WPX too quickly, but you've all mentioned Dayton. Any observations about the Dayton Hamvention?
We left that on the weather. It sure looked like it was going to be bad before, and then all the rain came overnight, so the daytimes were pretty good, and seemed like there were a lot of old people there, myself included. I was marveling at the size of the handicap parking lot. It was bigger almost than most Hamfest parking lots in total. No, it's a great opportunity to meet people. There were some fantastic presentations at the contest forum. Kilo Italy 1 Papa did one on his mobile rovering that was really entertaining. Usual Dayton experience. If you're not tired at the end of it, you didn't play hard enough.
Any takeaways, Dan?
I'm curious as to what your takeaway is too, because we kept stopping. For those that don't know, Kevin had a booth for his Q5 stuff, and we walked by 4 or 5 different times, and we could never get his attention because there's always people in that booth. He was always talking to people. That was super impressive to me. Having this new idea and having a lot of traction, it seemed anyway. How did it seem from your end, Kevin?
It was everything that you guys had said. Just meeting people for the first time that I've talked to on air or interviewed even. And yes, the booth traffic was just nonstop. Randy had this idea that I'd set up a camera and ask somebody a question and just do a short clip. And that was just a great idea. And it kept people talking. And I heard a lot of great stories. If I were to do it over again, and I will, I'd find a way to get away from the booth a little bit more, because that was the one downside. I only walked the show maybe a total of an hour and a half. So I didn't really have as much opportunity to see the full scale. And I was also moderating 2 Parks on the Air forum sessions, so that took me away on Saturday morning. But yeah, it was really a fantastic experience, and met a ton of people, again, that I've either interviewed or talked to on the air, and then even more than that I'd never heard of, but had actually been watching the contest crew and watching Q5, so really great experience. I was exhausted in the end. I actually packed up and left, I guess, about a half an hour early on Saturday and was flying out Sunday. So that was enough. I can't imagine if I'd stayed through for Sunday morning. I don't think I had it in me. I
came back to say goodbye on Saturday afternoon and you were gone. But that bright orange booth really stood out, and I got to say, the number of people who came up to me and talked to me about enjoying the contest crew and so on is just amazing. I'm glad people are enjoying it. I tell them all it's all because Kevin does all this editing to make us all sound really smart.
Well, I think we have some good momentum too. I've seen numbers go up on YouTube and Substack, but maybe more importantly, I have tons of interviews lined up. I've got 2 tomorrow, another 2 the day after that. So I'm really filling in the schedule. And as telling Chris earlier before we turned the cameras on, this wasn't necessarily from Dayton, but there's a pretty significant European contingent that I've been talking to that will be doing some interviews. So I'm really excited about that also.
Well, it's all coming together. People are watching.
For sure.
Now we just have to keep finding interesting things to talk about.
Next show, we'll talk about how you got that information about KC1XX.
I'd have to kill you if I told you.
Got one more thing to say. We travel the world for these contests and go to these big stations and all that stuff. I showed up to the contest station Thursday at like 3 p.m. Station was totally set up, had zero issues. Everything was perfect. And these station owners that do these kind of things are kind of the unsung heroes, right? Valery did a fantastic job reconfiguring his station from multi-single to single op. Same thing in Costa Rica. Cam had everything set up. So I really appreciate that, because I know like Brocco had to go to D4 and he had days of antenna work, and I know how exhausting that is. So I do appreciate the hosts putting in all of that work, and couldn't do it without anyone doing that. And I just want to say I really appreciate that.
Well, I did notice that he was standing beside you most of the contest. I don't know if it was the entire 36 hours, but he was sending these photos and video updates, and he was right in there with you.
He sat right next to me the entire time I was operating, just watching. He didn't listen. He just watched. And it was a little bit intimidating, because it's like, am I doing something wrong? Right? He was really worried about things breaking, as all station owners are. And I kept saying, man, things are going great. Everything's working perfectly. He's like, well, let's just keep it that way. No problem. It worked great.
Unless there's something else, we'll wrap up. I just want to say congratulations again to Chris. KL9A did a fantastic job, not only in Madeira Island, but that presentation in Dayton was fantastic. Thank you. This is Kevin Thomas, W1DED. Thank you for joining us.